Krallice's music has always felt extremely cold to me in the best possible way, from the frigid, spaced-out landscapes of their earlier albums to the fragmented, constantly dissociating structures of their more recent stuff. They headlined the last metal show I saw before everything closed, and they did not disappoint. They opened with time-rendered Omni, the last track from their 2019 EP Wolf. I'm going to talk about something that I'm calling fragment form in the first minute or so of this track, which contributes a lot to the coldness. And I'll connect these two by talking a little bit about how metaphor informs musical hearing and meaning. What I mean by fragment form is that this short track is made up of a bunch of short sections that contrast pretty dramatically with each other and all feel incomplete in some way. A big part of it is that the song is through composed, which means that none of these short sections come back once they're left behind. Here's the first section, which has a kind of weird shape. It could have been something conventional like this. But instead, it's like this, lasting for 22 quarter notes, which I hear as 5 measures of 4/4 and 1 measure of 2/4, instead of a more predictable 16 or even 24 beats. Instead of feeling like we get one whole riff, it feels to me like we get a fragment of a riff, or a riff where fragments are arbitrarily rearranged. So this first section on its own sounds like a fragment because of its shape. It sounds even more like a fragment when the next section, which feels pretty unrelated, begins. We go from the E minor sound of the first section to a disorienting series of ascending fifths, still starting with notes from an E minor scale, but eventually pulling away with the last G sharp, D sharp. Again, rhythm makes this a little clunky sounding. Instead of something in 4/4, which would also keep us centered in E minor, they tack on those extra 2 notes at the end. Each of these first 2 sections is made a little bit more stable, despite their awkward shapes, by being repeated. The next section is even shorter and feels even more fragmentary because it isn't repeated. There's also a discontinuity of tempo here that makes the change feel even more sudden. The fourth section seems like it will be repeated, but on the second time through, it gets abruptly cut off to start the next gesture, which is an ascending pedal point kind of thing that stops on scale degree 2 and repeats for what feels like an arbitrary number of times. All of these things make it feel kind of weird or clunky or awkward. We've had 6 distinct sections in the first minute, each of which is shaped a little weird, giving a sense of abruptness or even arbitrariness. I've identified some of the ways in which these riffs feel arbitrary or abrupt or awkward. How do we get from these impressions / features of the riff to coldness, which I said was my primary aesthetic impression? I think basically what happens is I take some metaphorical leaps guided by album art. And these leaps are also shaped by what I know about black metal, which is generally about cold weather and pretty anti-human in general. So for this riff, I interpret the abruptness as being indicative of a lack or a denial of human or organic contact. Humans and living things are warm, so their lack means coldness in this riff for me. Anyways, thanks for taking this metaphor journey with me. Now please go listen to Krallice
and contemplate both the futility of existence and the inextricability of human perception from ascribing any importance to the contemplation of this futility. See ya.